here, but I watched that whole Spanberger rebuttal to Trump's State of the Union. And look, I know Trump is, he's a bloviated ass, essentially, at times. He exaggerates a lot of his gains, and he caves on all the things he claims to be hard-ass about. So I'm not a believer like a lot of people. Like, I believe in the message, I believe in the objective, I don't believe in the person who's doing it. I don't trust government. That's me. I just don't trust it. I am conservative, but not the way people think conservatives are. In small government. The less they interfere with our lives, the more opportunities we can make for ourselves. So Spanberger, she makes this stupid comment about making things affordable, when meanwhile here in Virginia, she's killing us. Taxes, the taxes she wants to put through. I don't even know what got through, what didn't get through, to be honest with you. But just brutal. Like, she's going to make Virginia cost what it costs to live in New York. And that's where I'm from originally. And the problem with that is people don't make the same kind of money they make in New York. And people need to make that kind of money in New York just to survive. A single person to even have an apartment in New York has got to make, the sum of what a family needs to own like 5 acres and a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house here in Virginia. At least it was like that. That's changing. See, what she keeps doing is increasing the cost on regular people who are self-sufficient. And they're doing it in favor of what? Supporting foreign nationals that have essentially invaded the country. And that's what I consider what they call illegal immigrants. Now, they're foreign invaders. Yes, they're illegal immigrants. You could use that term all you want, but a foreign invader is a foreign invader. Someone who didn't come here legally. They came here secretively, which can be argued as forcefully. As far as I'm concerned, anybody who crosses someone else's border, without notifying or taking legal steps to enter that country is a foreign invader. And if you're not doing it for nefarious reasons, then why'd you sneak in? Or if you're not an unwitting tool for someone else's intentions, why'd you sneak in? Because I'm sure there are plenty of people who believe that was the only way to get in. They went to the coyotes, they snuck them in, whatever you want to call them, coyote, whatever they call these people. I don't know if that's a movie term or if that's a real thing. So, but Spanberger, and I've said this too many times myself, I sound like a broken record. She has this opposition to tariffs. And tariffs, as any normal person would understand, are taxes on foreign corporations. But at the same time, Democrats are the ones who always want to increase taxes on American corporations. So that should be all anybody needs to know about the Democratic Party right there. They want Americans to pay for everybody else. That's what it's always been about. Now, all their policies are about economically subjugating the common folks. The laboring class. The ones they want to give equal equity to, but don't believe that they should own their own personal property. They want to stick you all in tenements or, government-issued housing, so everybody has an equal-sized room and buildings with, the architectural interest of a cardboard box, but that whole brutalism design where everything is just cold and harsh and colorless. But anyway, the reason for that is because what I keep saying all the time is that socialism is serfdom. It's a slave society that they want. When you really think about it, they're taxing us to pay for other people. And when you take the wealth somebody else acquires through their labor and give it to somebody else, that's making those people who labored for it slaves. And I know you get to keep some of it, but you know what? Slaves got food, housing, and enough health care to keep them working too. That's what slavery is. You don't just work someone to death in the field and kick them aside. You want to keep that machine going. So that's the whole Democratic Party in a nutshell. And anybody who knows anything about history knows that they were conceived actually in opposition to the Constitution, because they were a party that kind of like the old English way of doing things, where the lords or the landlords or the people who were the monarchs put in charge of excuse me, controlling resources in specific regions were the only ones who had any real say, and the rest of us are just, fodder, whatever you want to call it. But I want people to bear that in mind, that a tariff is just a tax on a corporation. So every time you complain about corporate taxes, it's the same thing, just one of them's a foreign corporation, or corporations. When they do a blanket tariff on an entire nation, that's every corporation that is exporting out of that nation, or importing into the United States, in this particular case. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the cost increase is from all that. It can come out in the wash. What they're doing is, when you also put tariffs on there, what you're doing is you're establishing a price to do business here in the United States, which on its surface should, long-term, increase the value of United States currency globally, which of course means domestic as well. Now, if the tariffs are enough and Democrats start reducing regulations to do business here in the United States, because that's the other thing holding people back. We outsourced a lot of manufacturing starting in the 90s. Yes, oh, the wonderful 90s, right? In the 90s, we outsourced a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff went to India, China, I'm sure, like Pakistan. We already had some stuff in Taiwan. Just more of it goes to other countries. Basically what they did is they made it so difficult and costly to do business here in the United States, or at least to do manufacturing, or even to collect resources, even farming. They made it so costly in the United States where people just could not afford to stay in business here and still employ people. So they changed the structure of our trade systems to make it make sense to outsource, or to just turn your manufacturing over to foreign resources. And that is what's been killing the United States economically. If they never did that, the United States would be very, very, very wealthy right now. Because we cornered the market on nearly everything, just based on just the principle of consumerism. We consume more than anybody else, probably. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked at the statistics. But since individuals here have the ability to acquire and spend their own funds, and they're not reliant on what somebody else determines their dividends are, we consume things at a different rate than most other nations. And most other nations want a piece of this market. So just even having a piece of our market alone should do better for the dollar. When you keep outsourcing it, or you keep, importing goods from elsewhere, it's going to keep hurting you. We should never shut down any sort of energy production at any point in time. We could have cornered the market on that easily and kept it. It's a great idea to keep Venezuela in our back pocket and expand our influence through the southern region of the Western Hemisphere. Fantastic idea. There's no reason not to do it. We should be. As a matter of fact, the only wars that I actually agree with is going to war with these cartels. The drug runners, the human traffickers, and don't think they're not involved in legitimate businesses too. The smart ones are, and politics. As a matter of fact, you can tell the politicians that are in the pockets of the cartels, because they'll be the ones that support foreign invasions, illegal immigrants. They're the ones that want to pay to keep them here. They want you to pay to keep them here. Those are the politicians on the take. Yabba girls, Spain burgers, allegedly. I don't know I don't know absolutely, but realistically, it's either they're on the take or they're unwitting accomplices in the destruction of your nation or our nation. or the United States, wherever you may be. The thing is once this is gone, where do people have to go? Like, where else are you going to find, the liberty and the freedoms that were allowed to so many people here in the United States? We have a huge problem with just the voter bases in urban areas. They live in a tighter bubble than the more rural areas or the outer suburban areas of most of the nation. So the Democrats find easy control over the cities. Not only that, but they have the most immigrants. New York got taken by the socialists because they have a large population of immigrants that don't understand what the United States is supposed to be. So they come in here thinking that they're going to get something constructed based on, a foreign philosophy anyway, or the socialist philosophy, or the Sharia law, or whatever else they're doing over there. You know what I mean? They have their ideal version of it, so it's easy to sell it to those people. Even if you have, say, a city with like 30% of them are immigrants, now you have to take into account what are the percentage of people who actually go to and vote in local elections. And I'm going to tell you the outcome of especially localized elections definitely sways towards immigrants or persons who are not born here, or persons who may even be only a first generation here, who haven't expanded their opportunities outside the city that they moved to begin with. That's where their influences are. They're within those colleges. They're within, just the stores, the streets they're walking down, and they don't see much outside of what is around them. They could even be well traveled, but when people travel, where do they usually go? They're usually going to cities. Cities are a problem as far as influence goes. People have to look outside those cities, especially because those cities are supplied by the outer areas. I often say, even if there was a civil conflict in the United States, it would be easily won by the persons who are mostly on the right, just because they really they produce the resources. All those resources are imported into the cities. So all they would have to do is surround the cities, not let anybody out, like a castle siege, and you starve them out. It would take a long time, but it would reduce casualties by a great number. The problem is with the cities, they're taking over governance because they have the population concentration, so they get the votes in. And with the governance limiting the ability of the outer areas to produce resources, because now the cities can import them, it makes it very difficult. So, like in any other conflict, it's all about what kind of ground you can secure and what it matters. And I did notice that these foreign invaders, they go to strategic locations. They plant themselves in urban areas, but not just urban areas. They're urban areas that control very important seaports. You're going to find them closer to seaports and riverways, because that's where the trades, that's where the trading takes place, the commerce. They can control resources acquired by commerce that exist, outside the United States, imported goods and everything else. They control those resources in the sense that, like, if they're cut off from the outside, they can bring them in that way. And in the event of a civil conflict or a revolution or whatever you want to call it, a foreign takeover even from people who are already embedded here, all they really have to do is seize those territories and then control those ports. It'd be very difficult to get them out of there. They're dug in at that point. You can't just do carpet bombing or indiscriminate bombing over a region when it's mixed with people that you don't want as casualties as well. So they weren't stupid. I said it a long time ago when they were putting people into Minnesota, the Somalis, these back under Obama when they first started going on there. You have to pardon me if I don't talk lately. I just woke up. I'm driving to work. But what I was gonna say is, yeah, like if you put, I don't know what the number is, but if you got like 30,000 people in, say, Minneapolis, that were planted there from, say, Somalia or whatever, pick a country. I don't want to blame one over the other, but because it could be anybody. It could be a nation that you least expect to even be the one that's going to take you over. You don't know. That's the whole point. But if you put like 30,000 in like a city like Minneapolis, which I don't think has near the population of someplace like New York either, and you put rifles in their hands, that's more than enough to take over that entire city. Probably half of the state. More than enough. When you think about the numbers of people we put into, like, foreign conflicts and the damage we're able to inflict in those countries, trust me, the illegal immigration thing, or the foreign invasion, is a problem. It's a threat just looming over us, waiting to happen. Because, like I told people in the beginning, they're not all criminals. Okay, but if you have 5 million of them, and only 1% are violent criminals, how many more criminals did you just let into your nation? No one thinks of it that way. You cut it down to percentages, and suddenly you realize you've just imported a lot of crime, or not even crime, but a lot of threats. We'll put it that way. I just think these are things people need to think about. But ultimately, before anybody votes again, just be aware that a tariff is a tax on a foreign corporation. Next time you're like, the corporations need to pay more. A tariff is a tax on a foreign corporation. I always come back to it after my ramble rant. And I think people need to just wake up and realize that, and also understand that foreign corporations don't do with what American corporations do. Domestic corporations create taxpayers, which is the whole reason we don't need to tax them. They employ people domestically. You see? When they grow, they create jobs. Those jobs create taxpayers. It brings in taxes. Foreign corporations outside of tariffs, do not generate taxes for us from their employment. So everybody all worried about your funding, just be aware of that. And foreign nationals that reside here unlawfully, that are being supported by sanctuary cities, are sticking their biscuits in your gravy. Because your taxes, your public funds, are going to them. And they're doing it at a time when the nation's in great debt. And if we don't get rid of it, every time a deficit rises because we can't keep up with the debt, the value of the currency goes down. And don't think that's not a strategy by foreign enemies also, to flood the country with foreign nationals to increase our deficit, to reduce the value of our currency on a global level, which reduces our influence. And then we're relying on what? Military actions to get what we want? And what's the problem with military actions? When you attack one enemy, you usually gain others. That's the problem. Not just abroad, but here as well. Because there are people that reside here that their familial background is from all over the world. So every time we get involved in a foreign conflict, we alienate or we make a percentage of our population unhappy. And we can't really afford too much of that either. So I often wonder if the United States shouldn't be a neutral country.